Hey everyone, Walter Crosby, Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. So first thing, you may hate the shirt. I've had lots of people today comment on the shirt that it's a little too loud. Tough. Today's guest is a guy that has a podcast, has a web services business, and he's a musician. So we talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about how we learn that, we get that bug, and that drives us along the way, and the things that we learned as kids and early on entrepreneurs. We talk about how being an entrepreneur creates the stability that everybody thinks a corporate job has, and how we can control our own destiny and what that really looks like. And then we get into the idea of marketing and what a website should do and how we should simplify our websites. And he picks up some pretty simple things that we can do. It's got an offer that will help you if you want to kind of look at your website objectively. There's no strings. He'll help you see what you could do, and it's more like editing a high school term paper, right? The more we take out of it, the better our website is. And if we give people what they want and we tell them how they can take the action we want. So there's some really practical, impactful things. So go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. So I appreciate you taking some time, Tim, to jump on the podcast with us. We were just joking about your short, your T-shirt. If you can, so Alice Cooper.
The Alice Cooper shirt.
Awesome. That's a vintage one too.
It is a vintage one. It sure is.
So he's from. I'm live outside of Detroit. That's where he's from. It's just kind of ironic you pulled that one out today to wear.
Yeah, it is. Haven't worn it in a long time, but it just called to me today, and now I know why.
Apparently, that's serendipity. I was telling you in the green room. I once I had season tickets to a concert venue, and they would have different types of music there. Right? They could have Lena Horne to the Rockets to Jay Giles to Alice Cooper, and different packages. So I had a package different than my parents had, and I couldn't make the Alice Cooper concert. So I said, "Hey, Dad, do you want these tickets?" And he's like, "I don't know her music." And I'm like, "It's different. You might like it, you might not. I'm not sure, but I'm sure she'll entertain." So Dad was up when I got home that night. He did not appreciate my humor. But I was 20 rows off the speakers, so that was the biggest problem.
Wow.
They didn't stay long enough to see the whole show, right? And some of the stuff he was doing back then, but.
They must have started to get a little bit suspicious when the crowd started rolling in. Like, wow, these people.
They're not that observant. Okay. I think the smells should have tipped them off, like what was floating through the air.
Yeah.
Right? But be that as it may. So, like I said, I appreciate you jumping on. You're the third Canadian in a row to be part of the Sales and Cigars podcast. So I appreciate the...
Love it. Thank you so much for having me as well.
Well, let's start with the entrepreneurial journey. I always say, when we were 10 years old, we didn't anticipate doing what we're doing today. I'm not sure if that's the case for you, but how did you go from the kid were you from New Brunswick?
Yeah, I'm from New Brunswick. I grew up here.
So how'd you go from there to what you're doing today?
Yeah, it's a long and winding road. And it's funny that you mentioned 10 because I remember my first job was as a paper boy at 11. And right. I was probably 10 when I was thinking, I need money. I need to make some money. And
the entrepreneurial motivation, money.
The motivation, yeah, to get something going. And then being a paper boy was actually I never really thought about it until you had just mentioned it, but it really is a bit of an entrepreneurial journey. You really are. I was 11 years old, but I was responsible for my own paper route. I was responsible to collect the money, from the customers directly. The company didn't give me the money.
All right.
I had to go out there, deliver the papers, and also collect the money. So that was quite the experience looking back that I never really thought about until now.
Did you have to pay for the papers on a weekly basis and then go pick up
Yeah,
the? Yeah, I
yeah.
was a, I was a paper boy as well. Would you deliver the New Brunswick Star or what
It
was it
was
called?
called the Times and Transcript, and actually, I think it still exists today. But
Hmm.
yeah, there was a guy that came every week, I think it was, and he would collect from me, and I had to have the money for these
Yeah.
papers, and yeah,
Pulled up in a big Cadillac and jumped out of the car with a cigar and said, "Give me the money, kid."
yeah, 11-year-old, give me your money.
Yeah,
But
but
it was a good experience.
it teaches you some discipline to go deliver the papers. The customer experience has to be there, right?
Hmm.
Because I remember some of my customers, if I didn't put it in the exact spot where they wanted it, it was a problem. Like people were making phone calls and complaining, and they got their paper, it just wasn't in the side door; it was in the front door, right? But
Yeah,
that's where we learned that some people are unreasonable,
yep,
and we have to live with it.
yeah, and chasing people down for money. Oh my. I do remember that. Like, I mean, there were quite a few customers that were quite good. I mean, they would have the money waiting for me, and it was great. But other customers, I mean, they were hard to get a hold of, and there was no e-transfer back then. It was literally you had to go to their doorstep, and you had to find them home. Wait around the corner. Oh, there they are! Run out and grab them because some people trying to stiff an 11-year-old. I don't know why, but
But that's the thing. As an 11-year-old, you start to learn there's some sketchy people out there that we have to be cognizant of. It's a tough lesson as a kid, but do you ever have the middle-aged woman who was sometimes answering the door more scantily clad and trying to negotiate a lower rate?
I didn't get that. No, no.
Be thankful. Be
Yeah.
thankful.
Yeah, no, it was yeah, but I mean, there was quite a few of those customers that were like, paying the bill on time and all that stuff too. So at least I had the money for the guy with the cigar who came to pick it up.
Where did we go after the paper route? What was the next big step in your journey?
Yeah, I think that so in school I took a degree in computer science. So, I had the plans to go and, work for a big company and maybe hop around a bit. I figured I'd end up in Silicon Valley eventually.
Hmm.
But that didn't work out that way because I graduated in 2000, and that was when really the bubble burst in the IT industry. And I lived through 8 years of layoffs after layoffs at this huge company. It was one of the biggest companies in Canada at the time. And through that experience, though, I think what I learned mostly is that a paycheck is not guaranteed and it is not stable income, as they say, right?
Yeah,
And
not as what
so
people think. Yeah.
that's what people think. Yeah, that's what I was sort of like, taught is, that this is the safe route, right? And so when that was happening, I was constantly looking for a backup plan, and that was when I really got interested in internet marketing was one of the things. Network marketing was another thing. Like, just how can I make a few bucks on the side, and maybe I'll be able to move into that eventually when I eventually got laid off. Well, the company went bankrupt, so everybody got
Hmm.
laid off. Um, but that was really the kind of the taste of working for yourself as well. And then when that company did fall apart, I didn't want to just go get another job and deal with that again. I thought maybe I can do this on my own, and that was 15 years ago. And I will say it was a very, very challenging journey. Lots of ups and downs, but I was fortunate enough to have gotten a layoff package from that company, and so I had some money to start me off. And I also, as a musician, I was playing shows, and so one of the reasons why I didn't want to get a job was because I had gotten into a pretty good relationship with that other company. They had some pretty flexible rules, meaning I could come in at 11 o'clock, and work late if I wanted to. And I thought that was going to be a tough sell to a new company. I
Yeah.
want to play some gigs, so can I come in at 11? Is that
Yeah.
cool? So
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, but the other benefit to that is that I had a little bit of money coming in from music as well. So I was able to really stretch that out till I got my feet under me and had the company actually moving in the right direction. But that's really the beginnings of how it all started. I was fortunate enough through those experiences on the side, in network marketing and other places to really meet a lot of other entrepreneurs and to gather up some great mentors that were able to kind of like keep me moving when I was feeling like I needed to go back to a job.
Well, but I think that's a really good point that I'd like to kind of discuss is that we get the itch, right? We get that, like, we want to be that entrepreneur. We want to turn that side gig into the real gig. It's a little scary from time to time, especially when you did that for that 8 or 9 years. It was a disastrous economy.
Hmm.
Um, but it's having that desire to go do it, but getting in with a group of people that are like-minded, right? Maybe it's a mastermind, maybe it's like an EO entrepreneurial group, maybe it's just a bunch of guys that go get a beer together, or sit around a club after being on stage, whatever that is. I mean, how did that inform the rest of your journey? Did it give you confidence? Did it give you guidance to learn from mistakes? How did that help you?
I think it was both. I think it gave me confidence because I saw them doing it, and I figured, there were a few that I would never even compare myself to. Of course, they were, way ahead in the journey. But there was a few other people in my circle that were sort of like I could say, you know what, if you can do it, I can do it. This is probably
Mm-hmm.
something I can make it work. But then the other thing too is that it was always something where I could let them know what my current struggle is. Oh, I'm having a hard time getting clients, or I'm having a hard time keeping clients, or I'm having a hard time, with the cash flow, and I'm finding that I'm spending a lot more. All these questions, and then they would always have an answer. They would go, oh, you know what? Well, maybe you can
I
try this.
experienced that, and this is what I did. Those kind of
Yeah,
gestalt kind of answers.
yeah, and I think that I think another you know conditioning that we've gotten is that we don't talk about money, right? No, no, don't talk about money, that's bad and all that stuff. And I never really bought into that, so I was totally okay with telling them I was totally broke and things were not going well. And I think that that probably did save me. I think that if I had that sort of don't tell them that stuff, then because I mean these guys, they were peers of mine, they were friends of mine. We were going out and we were doing stuff, and I'd be like, listen, I can't do it right now. I can't afford it.
Right.
And then they would ask me why, and then we would end up in this conversation, and it usually ended in something that, oh yeah, let me try that, and then back on the road again.
Yeah. But it's that being open and honest with a group of people that you can trust. And I think that's a big part of having mentors. And the criteria that I've always looked at is, when I'm looking at mentors, or I won't take advice from somebody that I wouldn't go to, for any kind of guidance, right? If they're not getting it done at some level, they don't have to be Warren Buffett, but they have to have some sort of mistake, some sort of structure and success level, because if they've gotten there, they've struggled to get there.
Yeah,
And if I can avoid some of those struggles, and for me, mentors have been a big part of, at different people at different stages, but having the right people around us, where that have the right energy level, the right attitude, the ones that are negative. I mean, I've cut people out of my life just because, the half glass, half full, half empty kind of people,
yeah,
right? Well, there's people that are like, who stole my glass, right?
yeah,
They're just totally don't see any positives in anything, and that just brings us down.
yeah,
Um, and then salespeople have that same issue where we were taught as kids not to talk about money, don't ask a lot of questions, and don't be inquisitive. But as salespeople, that's what we're asked to do: go talk to strangers and ask them all these questions and do all the things that we ask you not to do as a kid.
yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, we have to do all of that plus. and really dive into that uncomfortable space. So
Yeah.
not having a mentor is makes it really, really hard to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of that, of the outreach stuff, like I did spend, I mentioned a couple of times, a little bit of time in multi-level marketing or network marketing, and that experience was absolutely incredible. And one of the things that you need to do is you need to get real comfortable with talking to people you don't know, because it doesn't take very long before all your friends don't want to talk to you anymore.
Right.
And so,
It's like insurance.
yeah, I mean, it's just it's a great experience if you really want to learn how to talk to people. And and I remember, we had a great time with that. We would go to maybe to a different area that, we don't like, maybe another city or whatever, and it'd just be a group of us, and we just sort of like watch each other go approach people, and just go talk to them, just go talk to them, see if you could find out. We would have these, maybe 3 or 4 questions. Go ask them these 4 questions. Go get these answers, and just head out there and do that. Really with no, we weren't trying to get a phone number at that particular moment. It was just, can you find out where this person's from? Can you find out what they do for a living? And, can you find out if they're married or single? That kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
And go out and do it. And it was great practice, especially when you don't have any of that pressure of having to make a sale at that particular moment. But
Mhm.
you learn how to talk to people. You learn how to get them to open up. And really, that's what you're trying to do in sales, is you're trying to get them to open up and tell you what their problem is, so that you can help them fix it, right?
Yeah. It's really just a conversation with some empathy, curiosity, and skepticism mixed into it.
Mhm.
I think that is a really solid experience to becoming comfortable with different people, conversations, and even comfortable with ourselves.
Mhm.
But you had another advantage if you're willing to jump on stage with an instrument and go perform. That gives you a certain level of confidence and ability to, like, you know, I'm going to go play my music, and it doesn't really matter what people think.
Yeah, and I'd say the two experiences were kind of overlapping. Like, it wasn't like I was playing lots of shows and then I got into business. It was kind of at the same time. They were both kind of moving in the same direction, and so they really, you're right. They really did help each other. Like, me getting some confidence going out there and trying to get a business card from somebody also helped me on the stage as well. Thinking that, oh, you know what, all these people are just people, you know. And
It it really is, and you just put them into a type of bucket, and but you enjoy what you're doing, makes it easier to have those kinds of uncomfortable conversations or to go into that uncomfortable space.
you bet.
Yeah. And all right, so let's talk about the Creative Crew agency, right?
Yep.
You're you're doing websites and helping people get their you're using some of those computer skills into a more creative space, which is pulling from your music, but it's pulling from your educational background. The entrepreneurial, you know, aspects are all in there. So, kind of give us a little overview of what the company is, and who your avatar is, who are the people you really like to help.
Yeah, like, yeah, exactly. You hit it really. It's kind of like a combination of all the things that I've done. Like, I've spent so much time in sales and marketing, and also so much time in technology. And how do we bring these things together, right? And so the agency itself, actually, right now, heading it is just myself and my wife. She's the graphic designer. She does all the branding and all that stuff, and I do the tech side. I do the tech support, and I also do all the marketing plan type stuff. Because the first question I ask anybody who wants a website is, why do you think you need a website? And it's kind of an odd question that sometimes trips people up. Like, what do you mean? Don't I need a website? Like, right? But you might not. I mean, it depends on your business, right? But one thing is for sure: if you're going to get a website, you better have a plan for what you're going to do with that website. And that's what I like to help people with, is to try to figure out, what do you want to do with it? I mean, the technology today is fascinating, compared to what it was 10 years ago, where you can run all your billing through your computer now, where people can just pay online. You can run your schedule through your website where people can book directly into your calendar. I mean, you know, all these things, right? It's
Sure.
just, there's so many things you can use a website for, but there's so much competition as well. And there's so many other people with website. Everybody's got a website, like, right? And
Everybody has a
so
website. Yeah.
what makes you stand out? Like, why would they go to your website? And then once they get there, people don't have the attention span to stay there for very long unless there's a reason for them to stay there. And so I think that one of the main things now to keep in mind is that, you know, simple is better, less is more. You know, maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you know, it was the fancy websites that were out there, right? Lots of spinning stuff when you get there. That does not work now. Now, you know, a very simple website that, you know, hits whatever that goal is. If the goal is to build your list, well, then it better be right at the top. Enter your email address. You know, if you're trying to get them on a call, well, it better be right at the top. Book a call, right? That kind of thing.
The fast, the spinny stuff, the flashy things, it slows it down. It confuses people. And even in the last 3 years, our attention spans, they've probably cut in half, right?
Yep.
I mean, everything rolls so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the ability to get yourself out there on social media, especially like your ability to get yourself out there is everywhere. It's so simple to be putting together little reels or whatever it is you want to do to get people to somewhere, but you got to have somewhere where you're getting them to, and then you've got to have something for them to do once they get there.
And
And
it
so,
has to speak to them and the problems you solve, and there has to be alignment there, right?
correct. Yeah.
So, hey, thanks for being part of the Sales and Cigar community. I wanted to share that I wrote a book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization. The CEOs who've read it tell me I cut to the chase quickly, get to the point, explain exactly what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, and how to fix it. So if you want a free copy, go check out the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview. I mean, there's a lot we could unpack there, but I think what I'd like to think about, because you know we talk a lot about sales, and a website is more than just the brochure that we used to have when I was younger, right? You just give people a little trifold brochure, and it gave them the picture of what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Now all that's digital, but we're capturing information. We're asking them to do something. We want to make it simple for them. So when you look at somebody has an existing website and they come to you and say, Tim, this is not working. I don't know what's wrong with it. It's pretty, where everything's spelt right. You know, I love your first question because it makes people go like, what do you mean? Do I need a website? Should I not have a
Yeah.
website? Because then now you got their attention. But when you do your audits and you look through it, what's like the one or two things that you see that people get wrong? You know, I'm sensing it's something to do with complexity. Is there
Yeah,
anything else?
it's almost always I get to a website and I don't know what to do. And I'll even get on. You know, you mentioned the audit. Yeah, I mean, I'll get on an audit with them directly. We pull up the website. I look at it and I go, okay, what do I do? What am I supposed to go?
What do
And
you want
I'll
me to
ask.
do?
Yeah. Well, and that's the next question. I'll be like, well, what would you want me to do when I got here? And they'll say, oh, you know, I want you to buy something. I'll be like, well, how come there's no buy button here? How come, where's the buy button?
You go to the grocery store and everything's hidden, but I want you to buy some groceries.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the framework that we've been working with, right? I mean, we've got this nice, pretty banner at the top, and then there's, you know, some details about me and all that stuff, and just tons of words, but no buy button, right? It's buried in a menu somewhere, you know. Or if they say, well, you know, I don't think they're going to buy right away. I think they need to talk to me first. Okay, well, how do I talk to you? What am I going to do? Like, is there a phone number there? No, you don't want me to call. Okay. What do you want me to do? You want me to book something? Like, you know what I mean? It's all going to be something like that. Tell me what you want me to do and why can't I do it?
And if we don't make it super simple and somebody can't figure it out in like 63 seconds, they're on to the next thing, right?
Yep.
So
Yep. They've already seen a video pop up on their Facebook and they're on there now. Right.
yeah, that's funny. So let's say that's a pretty common problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? I might even say my website has that problem to a certain degree. I think they have to scroll past the fold to get to what I want them to do, although it does pop up. Um, so is if somebody like thinking, shit, I have that problem too, Tim, how do I fix it? Is it an overhaul? Is it something that you can kind of do? Can you dial it back? And like, what do they do if they realize that they have that problem? How do they, aside from calling you and doing your audit, but what's like the next big step typically?
Well, it depends on the on where their website is, like how complicated it actually is. It might be as simple as just throw the button in the menu, or change the top banner. I mean, there can be some simple ways to fix some problems, but it tends to be a bit of an overhaul. However, to make things a little bit easier, usually the overhaul is going to simplify your website drastically. So you're not going to be I mean, you're going to be pulling out probably a lot of stuff, and this is I'm just going by probably 80 to 90% of the people that
Right.
I see a website. We're dumbing it down. We're taking a bunch of stuff out. I mean, oftentimes I try to get people into a 1-page site, possibly a 2-page site. You know, my page, my Creative Crew Agency, is a 2-page site. The only reason why it's a 2-page site is because the second page is the portfolio, and I got a lot of things I want to show off.
Yeah.
You can't just throw that on the front page.
Yeah. You got testimonials and stuff too. But the, I'm thinking about like my high school English composition professor or
Mm-hmm.
teacher. He was actually a professor too. And he taught us how to write, and it was brevity, clarity, and unity. Right. And it's really simple, right? Take out everything that you can take out until it starts changing what you're trying to say. And
Yep.
that sounds similar to what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
there's a quote, and I got to find out who said it because it's great. But it says, "If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter."
No, that's perfect. That's exactly it. Because
Yeah.
it takes time to edit.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, and that being said, I mean, with AI tools, the Chat GPT thing, oh my goodness, that is changing my world when it comes to content. Because nowadays, to be able to get some great content, you just ask the AI guy to do it. I mean, you can literally say, you can write out your whole life story, which, most of the times when people send me content, there's a lot of content. Grab that whole thing, throw it into Chat GPT, say, make this 25 words, and you're done, right?
But
It
that's
will
the
do it.
right way to use that tool
That's
is
the
to
right way
help
to do
you
it.
edit. It is the right way, I think,
Yeah.
to help you edit.
Yeah.
Because we have a tendency to love what we write, love what talking, to hear ourselves, hear our own voice. And from a sales perspective, nobody cares,
Yep.
right?
I also think that indecision is a massive problem in most people's psyche as well. And so, do I keep this? Do I keep that? Do I keep this? Do I keep that? You waste a lot of time with that. Whereas if you just throw it into something, it pumps out an answer. You're like, that's fine, right? And off you go.
It really does take a. It's a great tool when used effectively, but it can be it can be used for the wrong reasons to create more content, right? And rather than making your content better.
Yep.
That's just one of the things I've seen.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think a short, powerful story on a website or on a page to me is the most powerful thing because if you can make it relate to your avatar or your ideal client profile, whatever that is. I think it was Hemingway who wrote a really powerful, impactful story that was 6 words: baby shoes for sale, never worn. I mean, if you really think about that, it's awful, right? What it could mean. But it tells a whole story there in 6 words rather than, 6 paragraphs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a great point for folks who are listening to this and they realize they have that problem. Maybe others, they can come to you. We'll have your website and the link to your audit, if that's okay, in the show notes
Yep. Yep.
for people to ping you because you can go anywhere, right? As English speaking. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the benefit of my business. It's everywhere. I mean, I've got I think that that's another challenge for certain businesses as well, because if they're working just in a local market, then you got to build it for that local market. But if you can work anywhere, then that's great.
Yeah, it opens up your world.
Yeah.
I try to limit it to my work in a time zones. Like
Yep.
I don't want to be working on Pacific time zone. Just not convenient for me. It's selfish, but it is what it is. But I can go beyond the 50 miles around my office. Otherwise, I'd be in big trouble.
Well, for me, what I've done is I've worked everything into my I either Calendly or HubSpot, my online booking forms. If you can get me on the form, then I'll be at the meeting. But if you can't, then you won't. And I find that that works extremely well. And I really struggled to start using it. Actually, it was one of my clients that was telling me I should do it, and it took me forever. I thought, well, I'm going to lose people. But I ended up doing lots of calls in the evenings, lots of calls on the weekends. And, it just really was not good for my work-life balance and for my schedule. But now that I've got this tool, I literally just send everybody there. And you know what? I'm terrible with time zones. And so many times I would miss calls because I just wouldn't figure it out properly.
Right. Yeah.
And this just takes care of all that. I just show up on Zoom and off we go, right?
Yeah. Well, it's actually more convenient for your prospect to not have to go back and forth with yourself or an assistant and try to figure it out. Like, I'll just go look at your calendar and you can control your calendar.
Yep.
Like on Tuesdays, they only want to be available here, and on Fridays, they only want to be available here. That's another great thing to have that on your website. So
Yeah, it's a huge win-win.
let's pivot to like how we met, because you've got a really cool podcast.
Thank you.
I've done quite a few as a guest spot, and I listened to quite a few. And your approach from my perspective as a guest, I mean, you help make the guest comfortable with what's going to happen, and you allow them to tell a story that fits into your format. I thought it was great. So let's talk a little bit about why and how that got started, because I think that's another cool story.
Yeah. Yeah. The way it got started
Probably should
was
tell people the name of it. I didn't do that.
it's called the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. And actually, I had purchased workathomerockstar.com. I'd purchased that domain years before the podcast came into fruition. It was just, I don't know why, a lot of things I go on hunch. I guess it's just, and I thought it was a cool name. So I bought it. And then it was years later that one of my clients was a podcast coach. And he's like, damn, you got to start. You know what? It's the same guy. It's the same guy who convinced me to get a calendar app. Yeah.
Cool.
But anyway, he was doing podcast coaching, and he says, you know what? This is the way to go. I mean, and I think you'd be good at it too. You should get a podcast. And so I did. So well, it took me a while, but eventually I did. And the idea behind it was that I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to do something that wasn't focused on mindset, because I find a lot of podcasts are very focused on mindset, especially back in 2015 when I started this one. And I wanted to more or less handle some of the practical issues that people would face when they became self-employed or were working from home. Because I know that when I started work from home and when I started my business, there were a lot of things that tripped me up that I just wasn't expecting them to trip me up on. It wasn't a mindset problem. I knew I wanted to do it. I had that mindset from the paper route times, but the things that I found was, number one, my first business was, I was an IT guy. I was fixing computers physically. I was going into offices. I'd get these small, maybe an accounting firm or whatever. That was one of my clients, a small grocery store. And I'd go in and I'd make sure that their networks were working and their computers were working, the printers were working, all that stuff. And that was my gift at the time. I loved solving computer problems. I would do it for my friends for free, right?
Right.
Just all the way even through university. And so I thought, I'm great at this. This is what I'm going to do. Well, I found out pretty quickly that about 80% of my time was not doing that. It was doing other things. And so I wanted to kind of I wanted to ask all the questions like, how do you handle your cash flow? Make sure that you're making more than you're spending. How do you set up a home office to make sure that you're going to be productive? Um, how do you get your name out there? How do you do the marketing? How do you make sure that you got leads coming in while you're doing the work? All these things that,
Are
you know,
practical.
yeah, they're essential. You need to know how to do all these things in order to be successful. And so, and I wanted it to be a guest oriented podcast because I wanted it to serve two purposes. I wanted it to be something that would be providing value to people that were out there that were looking to start a business, but I also wanted to be providing value to me. I wanted to have these great conversations with these great people that had success doing, what I was doing. And I thought, if I can learn some things from them, maybe they can learn some things from me. And that's how it all got started. And little did I know that way more people would be working from home in the next short
Yeah.
while. I did predict it, but I didn't know it was going to happen that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I think there's only like 4 or 5 people that predicted it, and they just didn't tell anybody else. But
Yeah.
that's for another conspiracy-related podcast program,
Yep.
not this one. But
Exactly.
I would bet that your podcast rarely goes by when you do one that you don't learn something, your audience learns something, and the guest learns something. I would think that that happens just about every time, most of the time. Is
Yep.
that fair?
Yeah, and even if it's not learning, sometimes it's reminding, right? Because there are a lot of opportunities where a lot of things where something would happen, and I'd have a podcast, and then they'd bring something up, and I'd be like, "Oh man, I used to do that. And I got out of the habit of doing that. Okay, yeah, I got to get back into doing that again." And
But that's I still like you're right. It is remembering or being reminded, but to me that's still learning,
mhm,
right? Even if you just nod your head and go, "Yep, that's the thing that we all should be doing,"
mhm,
right? That's just reinforcing the stuff that we know we're supposed to do. But I think the thing that so I would encourage people to go out. It's everywhere, right? Anywhere there's somebody has a podcast, they can just go out to work at home. Um, uh,
yep,
Rockstar podcast.
work at home
Um,
rockstar.
and we'll have that in the show notes as well. But for me, it was like you had enough structure that a guest could sound smart, even like somebody like me who's not. You could get them to sound relatively smart and add some value, and be comfortable. I mean, that's a big thing. Some people are. I mean, I get on and talk to people. I mean, that's what I do for a living. But I think that's you make it easy for people. So who are you looking for? Who's your ideal guest on that, so that somebody can self-identify and reach out to you?
Yeah, the only criteria that I have for that show is that you have to be working from a home office most of the time. Okay, fine, you might, be working in, some offices every once in a while, but you have your majority from home, and you have to be able to pay your bills with your business. So it's a full time thing, right? I want to be making sure that people that are coming on the show are actually running that business as a full time business from home because that's what I want to gain the experience from. That's what I want people to hear. That's what I want. I want people to be inspired listening to it and going like, oh, you know what? Because when you do it that way, there's so many different businesses, so many things that I would have never even thought of that you could make a business out of that. And it's just one of those things where if you're listening to these shows or if you're scanning through, you're like, oh yeah, I could probably do that. I want to inspire people to do it because that was really the main focus of why I wanted to do it in the first place was I wanted to inspire more people to be in control of their future, of their financial future. Because I know that, living through so many layoff rounds, in a company and then listening to so many of my friends kind of complaining about their jobs and, you know, come on, like you don't have to
Right?
be in that boat. You can do something
Not
on your own.
anymore. I realized. I'll tell a short story quickly that I had a gig that I was really paid well, um, that I hated. I loved the environment. I loved the what I did, but it just the place that I worked was awful.
Mhm.
Um, and I ended up leaving that job to go to a startup thinking that this was going to be a great thing, and then they could never start. I sold all the stuff they had, and then they couldn't build anymore, so it failed. So I'm 6 months later. I'm back on the street looking for a gig. Right? Sounds familiar?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I was going to have to go work for an asshole again, and I didn't want to do that. And I figured if I was going to go work for an asshole, it might be me. Might as well
Yep.
be me.
Yep.
Um, and I just somehow found the confidence. Like I got all this stuff in my head, and then I just went out and did it. And my wife thought I was nuts, but she gave me the space to do it and had some success, and then it just starts to build. But um, I think so. Between 20 and 22, your pool of guests like went up 10
Oh yeah.
times.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah. There's a lot of people.
and your exposure had to have grown too. So that's great. Um, so last question I like to ask guests, past or present, do you have a relationship with cigars?
Probably not present. I haven't had a cigar in a while, although I did have a friend visiting last weekend who had a cigar with them. Uh, so that was kind of an interesting coincidence as well.
Hmm.
But way back when, I definitely had a few cigars in my day, and
Were they were
I
they
I like them.
celebratory? Were they celebratory cigars, or were you? Is it just something that you did because everybody else was doing it socially?
More
Curious.
something that I did because everyone else was doing it socially, which
Okay.
is which is how I approach pretty much. That's how I approach alcohol as well. I typically don't drink alone, but I
Yeah,
love to drink socially with other people. I think
that's a
it's
good. I've never thought of that. That's a good point. I have like I my office and I broadcast from my cigar lounge
Mhm.
in my property. I have 80, 85 bottles of bourbon on my bar, and I rarely have a drink
Mhm.
unless I go make one and then I go into the deck and my wife and I sit out and have a drink together.
Yep.
It's weird. I don't like drinking by myself. I think it's probably something to do with my DNA and my family, but that's another long story. So,
Well,
um,
yeah, and I did make that decision. It was back in university. I remember like Frosh Week type time, and it was a conscious decision. I decided that I was never going to drink alone,
hmm.
and there is a bit of addiction in my family. I mean, yeah, I think there's addiction in everybody's family, really, when it comes down to it.
Well,
It's
some of us are
everywhere.
get a little stronger one of those, but
Yeah,
I know my father's side of the family. There's more alcoholics than teetotalers. I can tell you that. Um,
yeah. And I just thought that would be a decent rule to set into play, and it's served me quite well. I mean, over the years, and I mean, having a cigar or a drink with buddies is awesome. Like, you know, I,
yeah,
it's one of those things, and I think you get a pass on those days, right?
yeah. It's a vice, and for me, it started on the golf course with friends, right? And being outdoors, you're doing something quasi athletic, because you can have a cigar and a cocktail and play golf
Yep.
at the same time. So it's really not all that athletic the way we do it. But so I appreciate that, and I think that's a great. I learned something every time I do one of these. I learn something from somebody. So thank you. So we have all the show notes. All in the show notes. We have all the ways to get a hold of you. But I always ask, what's the best way? Just to go to your website and click on your calendar link and book time with Tim. Is that the
Yep.
best way?
Yep. If you're looking for business, for anything to do with your website or technology or branding, anything like that, then it's creativecrewagency.com. You'll see a contact button there. You'll be able to book a free consultation. And if you're actually looking for some inspiration, well, then go to workathomerockstar.com and check out the podcast. I mean, you can check out the episode with you, Walter.
Uh, yeah, that's probably not the best one to go to, but you have a lot of them. So
It was a good one.
it was fun. To me, that's part of the criteria. When I started this thing, to me, it was like I want to learn something, add some value, and Walter needs to have fun. And we accomplished that today. So I think I
Agreed.
appreciate your time, man. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much as well. This was a great conversation.
Cool. Good. I love sharing secrets when I figure them out. That's why I created this program called Sales Hiring Secrets. Early in my sales management career, I was terrible at hiring salespeople. They failed more often than not. Then I discovered the secret that you can't hire salespeople the same way you hire everyone else. That's why everyone fails. In Sales Hiring Secrets, I'm going to teach you all of the secrets to understanding what you really need your salesperson to do, how to attract an ideal candidate with a unique job posting. I'll teach you how to save time and money by only interviewing candidates that are a good fit. I'll share the secrets to an interviewing process that ensures success. And the one big secret that everybody gets wrong is how to onboard a good salesperson so they ramp up quickly and stick around. I'm doing the Sales Hiring Secrets program on a monthly basis. You can click the link below to figure out when the next Sales Hiring Secrets program is scheduled, and you can sign up. Click the link below, and you get all the details. And it's designed for you to bring your entire team so you can get everybody up to speed quickly. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you on the other side.